Ready, people?
Hello, people. Welcome to a special episode of RockerMike and Rock Presents. Who do we have today, Mike?
Okay, we have Mr. Charly Cazalet. Let's
Cazalet.
introduce him.
Who do we have today, Mike?
Okay, we have Mr. Charly Cazalet. Let's
Cazalet.
introduce him. Big show today. I'm excited to have him on. Thank you for coming on, Charly.
Yeah, thank you.
A fixture in the mid '60s rock scene here in the city. Charly was a member of a band called the Outsiders.
Not to be confused
Not
with the
right,
Outsiders
not to be
from
confused with the Outsiders from Ohio.
Before
They recorded "Time Won't Let Me," but you recorded the guy with the long Liverpool hair. Great song.
and the Outsider.
And right, flip side was the Outsider.
We couldn't agree on a name, so one of the producers said, "Why don't you call the band the Outsiders?" And we said, "Yeah, okay."
Then you just
We
went
were
along with it.
easy.
Yeah,
Yeah, we went
yeah,
along with it.
yeah. It's a good name.
Sometimes
Did
that
you know
works.
there was another band with the name?
Well, they hadn't come out yet. That was in 1967.
Yeah, they were more like
That was
'68, something like
3 or
that.
4 years
Yeah,
after.
yeah,
They
yeah.
probably weren't even formed. At the
Probably
time.
not. Probably not. Now, Charly, you're from France originally, right?
Yeah, I was born in the south of France,
Mm-hmm.
a little fishing village then called Sète, S-E-T-E, in Languedoc.
Okay.
And my father came over and worked here for a year, and then he sent for us, and we came over on a boat
Mm-hmm.
to New York City. And my first impression was when we got off the boat, we were getting in a checker cab. And I saw the seats come up, and
Yep.
I said, "Wow, this is America. I like it already."
Checker cabs were famous. I
So
wasn't a few of them.
we went to my father had this apartment. We went up there, and the first thing he showed us was a bottle of ketchup. And he said, "This is really good stuff." And
Put it on
you can
everything?
Put it on it, just about anything. So, especially French fries. And so my mother made some French fries. We ate that. Then my mother thought, "Oh, maybe we could put on spaghetti." So she made a little spaghetti.
Oh, man.
Because my mother was born in France, but her parents are Italian,
Okay.
Sicilian, and Calabrese.
Yeah.
And so we put it on spaghetti, and it didn't work. So
No,
we
it
threw
doesn't
that
go on
out,
spaghetti
you
too
know.
good.
That was like
Yeah.
the first day we were in. Me and my older brother and mother were in Manhattan on West 100th Street, Amsterdam and Columbus,
Mm-hmm.
across the street from a police station. I remember we used to get little presents from the police station during Christmas. And I went to Holy Name of Jesus Catholic school from kindergarten to the 5th grade. Then they
Right.
threw me out. At that point, we lived on 91st Street, and so I started going to public school.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Now, this was like the early '50s, right? Pretty
Yeah,
much.
this
Was
is
the
the
public school Brandeis?
Huh?
Brandeis?
Brandeis High School. Brandeis public
High school?
High school. Or,
No,
you were
no.
you moved to
No.
Queens though eventually,
Yeah, I
right?
moved to
Oh,
Queens
okay.
in 1960.
Mhm.
Oh,
I was
okay.
in junior high school. Actually, I got left back in the 2nd grade and the 8th grade, so I never made it out of junior high school. I quit when I was 16
Mm-hmm.
in the 9th grade. I was in the 1st grade. I
Now,
was
was
2
it-
years behind already, so
Mhm.
I was just getting in trouble and had bad grades except for history.
Okay.
And so I decided, I'm going to quit school, and I started working in the garage with my brother, automatic transmissions. They showed me how to take apart
okay.
the transmissions.
Okay.
We were doing that. Then my brother quit, so I got fired. And I worked as a grease monkey in Brooklyn in the garage, and I got fired there because the guy said my heart wasn't into it, and I was really happy to get fired. And so, a little while after we saw the Beatles before that, I think we saw the Beatles on, and I knew that, and I played guitar a little bit, and I knew that this is what I wanted to do.
Once you saw the Beatles.
Yeah, once.
So many people
I was
say that, right,
convinced.
I know a lot of people have seen the Beatles. When you saw them, was on the Ed Sullivan
Ed
show?
Sullivan, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it. That from there on, they became legend. Like,
Yeah.
That's it.
There's a famous story that Alice Cooper tells. Okay, where he saw the Beatles as a kid, right? I think he was about 14 or something, 15, and the parents were like, "Oh my God, what's this?" Right? But he loved them. Starts a band, sounds just like them, right? And then the Stones come a year later,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And then the parents really shit.
Not even.
right?
Yeah.
Not even.
Not even
yeah,
6 months later or something.
And
The
a
Stones
few
were
months
good.
later, the Stones, they caught 5, the Searchers.
Right.
Um, But as soon as I stayed home for about 3 or 4 or 5 months, and from the time I saw the Beatles, and practiced my guitar 5 or 6 hours a day. So after that, after a few months,
see, you were really into that.
yeah, I mean, I was dedicated
Obviously.
to learn how to play guitar, so I did. I played a pretty good rhythm guitar. So I went across the Queens Boulevard to Forest Hills because I lived in Rico Park, and I met a guy. I knew a guy named Pete Hendelman, and he had an older brother, and I used to hang out with his crew once in a while.
Right.
But I liked him because he played guitar really well.
Okay.
He could do all the Chuck Berry riffs, and he played Bonanza, the theme
Theme
song.
from
Bonanza. Wow.
And
Cool.
I was like, so I learned that from him.
Yeah.
And, so I asked him, this was like in the summer of '64. I said, "You want to put a band together?" And he said, "Yeah, as long as my friend Gordy McLaren,
Right.
or Gordon McLaren, can play bass." And he couldn't really play. He knew a couple of notes. And Pete said, "I'll teach him all the parts, all the songs in our own time." And so he did. And with the three of us were rehearsing. And then we finally said, okay, we need a drummer. Then we found this guy out in Long Island, Richie Scalzi, and hard name to pronounce.
Yeah.
He would change his name, right? To is that a different Richie? Richie Stone.
Well, that's what they called him.
They
because
called
they
him
couldn't
that.
pronounce.
They gave him an easy
his
name.
They're like me. When the name is too long, I'll change it.
But he was like 22 years old. We were like
Oh, he was
16,
a lot older than you guys.
and he was a really good drummer. But he
Yeah.
liked the fact that we had long hair. And we were doing, we were contemporary, and but his hair was he was already receding. So he had a receding hair,
Wow.
so he could.
He was definitely
tone
old.
his hair down. He tried a couple times. It didn't work.
He did the
He's in the back playing drums. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, Pete and Gordy, I had my hair was still combed back, kind of Jerry and the Pacemakers.
Yeah.
But it was long, and Pete and Gordy was growing their hair long, but they had their hair greased up in a jelly roll. But when we would go into Manhattan,
Oh my God, I haven't
when
heard
we go
that.
into Manhattan, they comb their hair down, and
Yeah.
take pictures like the one we have in the magazine,
Yeah.
and Ugly Things magazine.
I'm glad you brought that up because I want to give a shout out to Ugly Things magazine. This is something that comes out a couple times a year. You guys heard me talk about it several times. Ugly Things number 53 in particular is the one that Charly is featured in. Let me just kind of give a little backstory here how I hooked up with you, okay?
Yeah.
Because
But
it's
you
kind of
went from
interesting.
Grease Monkey to guitar player. That's impressive.
I know, and I only want to take a short little sidetrack here because we're going to get back into it. I've always liked a band called The Groupies. Okay, I've known about them for many, many years, and they've always been very mysterious because they've only had one single. There's a song called Primitive, and the flip side was a song called I'm a Hog for You. Primitive was covered by one of my favorite bands called The Cramps on their second album.
Cramps?
Yeah, The Cramps.
Yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, they covered Primitive, okay, on
Yeah.
the Psychedelic Jungle album, their second album. So Cramps fans and fans of 60s garage music always knew about this band, but very little was known about them. They were popular here in the city. They kind of went to LA, and just kind of fell off the map. So this year, a live recording was found and put on an album by, I believe it's Sunday's Records.
Sunday's,
yeah. And it just came out in the last couple of months, and it has the single Primitive and I'm a Hog for You, and a live show about 10 songs, them playing in California, and actually the great Kim Fowley actually introduces them in the concert, so
Is
it's
it
cool.
like a DVD with the live show?
No, it's not. No, it's not DVD. It's just an audio recording
just
on
audio
album. Yeah, album CD. There's no video of them that's known, as far as I've ever heard. Okay, but the thing is, I wanted to do a show about them, and it's hard to trace these people down. I was told.
You said Cooker was still alive?
Well, that's the thing. I wanted to speak to Cooker. Cooker was the lead singer. And there was, in this latest Ugly Things, there was an interview from back in 2004 that a guy named Jeff Jarima had done with Cooker. And big shout out to Jeff, because I've been in contact with him, and he does a lot of liner notes on records. He writes for Ugly Things. He's a great guy. Very, very informative with the '60s music. He's very knowledgeable. He suggested that I speak to you because you were featured in the next article right after the groupies.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And he had done an interview with you, and there is a connection between your band and the groupies.
Yeah,
Which,
Pete and Gordy were
Right.
in the Outsiders before the groupies.
right.
Oh.
Right.
So
Which we'll get to that story in a second, how
Okay.
that happened. But the connection was, between these two bands. And then I spoke to Charly and I said, you know what, you got to come on the show. You got a lot of great stories. Let's talk about what you did.
And
And,
then
here we are. So
And he knew George.
and he also he was involved with the Left Bank, and the Left Bank member George Cameron, drummer, was a regular at the International Bar where we all hang out. Rob works at, and George sadly passed away about 2 years ago. And you were good friends with him, so it's a small world, this music business, right?
Yeah,
It really is. It's funny how it all goes full circle. But I just wanted to sidetrack that and give you a little backstory. So, the Outsiders was basically you on rhythm guitar and vocals. You had Richie Stone as a drummer, Pete Hendelman on lead, and you had a guy named Mike Richards on rhythm, right?
well, his real name was
Was-
Michael Ramirez.
And he has an interesting little background. Why don't you tell us?
Yeah, well, I knew Mike from junior high school, and I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. So we put the Outsiders together. We were rehearsing at Richie's house out in Long Island,
Right.
in the basement, and we were just rehearsing. We had no idea what we were doing, and then I get a knock at the door. And I was in Queens in Rio Park, and I opened the door. I see this guy. Looks like I thought it was Keith Richards. You know, his hair down. I said, Keith, what are you doing here? And he said, he started laughing and said, "It's me, Michael Ramirez from junior high school." I said, "Holy shit, Michael, come on in." So this guy Walter Zam, who also had a Beatle haircut but wasn't a musician, had sent Michael over and told him I had a band and I had long hair.
Yeah.
So Michael said he was putting the band together and he needed a guitar player. And I said, well, listen, I already got a band together and we're playing songs, and why don't you join our band? So at that point there was 5 of us. He came out and he played guitar, and it wasn't that bad. It wasn't that good, but...
Now, Mike kind of knew he looked like Keith Richards, right? Because he
Yeah,
used to
yeah.
go around saying that
Yeah,
with an English
Mike-
accent, a fake English accent.
Well, Mike was the Manhattan connection. He brought us
Yeah.
into Manhattan.
Right. He lived in Manhattan, right?
And we were started hanging around in Manhattan. And I would see these kids with long hair, and one of them was George Cameron in the future Left Bank. They had these phony English accents, and they would tell
George used to
people,
use a fake accent.
Mike Ramirez was telling people, "Yeah, I'm Keith Richards," and they would pick up and girls would believe.
Girls
them,
would believe it, yeah.
or they want to.
It's always about the girls.
And, I tried it once, but my English accent wasn't that good. So
You should have spoke French.
well, nobody knew any French
Nobody
rock
knew.
stars in those days.
It would have been impressive.
But we were in Manhattan. Mike Ramirez brought us into Manhattan, and we met these 2 producers. We were hanging out at Ham and Eggs, this diner on I think it was 52nd and Broadway.
Right.
And
a great
he
name.
introduced us to these 2 producers, Lockie Edwards and Ray Fleming. Ray Fleming
Right.
went on to manage Mandrill years
Oh.
later.
Okay.
And so they said, listen, we were interested in producing, making a recording with the long-haired band. We want to do this right away.
And they just happened to see you in the restaurant, hanging
Mike
out.
knew them. Mike
Oh, he
knew
knew them. Okay.
And he knew what was happening with them. And they had an office right next to Ham and Eggs upstairs, that they shared with about 12 other guys.
Yeah.
So, all black guys.
Okay.
And so, they brought us up to a rehearsal studio, and we played a couple of tunes, and they were like really happy. Said, "Oh, these guys can actually play."
Yeah.
And they thought, well, if we couldn't play it, we get studio guys to do the songs.
Yeah.
So then they took us to the Brill building to a publisher. We met a couple of songwriters, a guy named Stone and somebody else, I don't know,
Yeah.
who wrote The Outsider, and another guy, a couple of guys that wrote the guy with the Liverpool hair, which was a funny song.
Yeah.
We didn't really like that.
Was it kind of done seriously or almost as a novelty kind of to do a song like that?
No, they were doing it. The A side was supposed to be the Outsiders,
Right.
and they were doing it. They were very serious about it. We didn't like the songs. It wasn't our kind of thing, and but they said the Outside is going to be the A side, and it's going to be a hit, and you guys are going to be rich.
But it ended
and
up being
famous.
the other way, right?
Yeah, I think so. Well,
I think the Liverpool Hair one is the A side.
we went in. We recorded these two songs with them at Mirror Sound, which was a state-of-the-art studio that Phil Spector was recording the Ronettes in before that.
Yes.
Wow.
And it
We
was
did
a
a show
four
about
track
that.
because there wasn't anything more than 4 tracks at the time. We did it. It sounded okay. They wanted Mike Ramirez to sing the lead, but he couldn't sing it that well, so we all sang the lead in unison.
Yeah.
I ended up being the lead singer of the band because nobody else could sing, you know. But Pete and Gordy could do harmonies and
Yeah.
stuff, and they sang the harmonies on the Outsiders.
Right.
You can hear some harmonies, and so all of us singing it together. It sounded okay. And the guy with the Liverpool, we did it all sang in unison with the whole thing.
Now, I saw some kind of short little reviews about that single,
Yeah.
and everybody seemed to really like the guy with the long Liverpool hair.
Yeah, it was a funny song.
It was a funny song, and for anybody that wants to hear it, it's on the Rock Show group page right now as the RockerMike song of the day. So check
Yeah,
that
I saw
out.
that.
It wasn't
Yeah.
no guy you saw me with.
Yeah.
It wasn't no guy, I swear. Oh no, it wasn't no girl you saw me with. It wasn't no girl, I swear. It was a guy from where I work with that long Liverpool hair. Some guys wear. That was like the chorus.
It's real catchy. It's real catchy. Now, the critics seem to really like that one, but the Outsider, they kind of crapped on a little bit. A couple of reviews.
Yeah.
But I gotta be honest with you, I like the song. I really do because it's a typical 60s song that's kind of like about a breakup. Like he's saying, like, you know, my relationship's so great there isn't room for an outsider, but then the girl is like seeing some other guy.
Yeah.
You know, so it's a nice little twist. It's a good song. It's a good song.
So we recorded the songs, but it wasn't. That was in the fall of '64, and it wasn't released till I think April '65.
Okay.
Right before the band broke up.
Now think about that. You know, fall of '64.
We didn't even know because we had
You didn't know, yeah.
we weren't seeing Lockie and Ray at that point. We had forgotten about them, but we were assigned to them to a 5-year contract.
Oh.
You know, and we didn't know it was on the contract. You know,
Yeah.
We
They had you
signed it.
locked in for 5 years like that.
Yeah,
Wow.
our parents signed the permission.
Oh, your parents had to sign it?
Yeah.
Well, they had to sign permission for us to sign the contract.
Right.
We were under 18 except for Richie.
Oh,
Wow.
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 I didn't even realize that you needed to get your parents.
Yeah, if we were under 18.
If you were on, you were too young.
Yeah.
So, how was the industry back then? Like, was it like a battle to get signed, or you just guys met these producers and pretty much they were like, you guys
Well,
wanted
you know,
to...
it's like who you knew and, you know, your music and stuff. And we hadn't really played out yet. We recorded that song before we started playing in clubs. And
Right.
so, and we used to hang out a lot at the Scene.
I was just going to ask you about
The
that
Steve
because
Paul Scene.
the scene was a famous spot here in the city for bands. I think mostly
Well, at
it
the
was
time
Yeah.
when we started hanging out there, it was an after theater dinner club.
okay.
And they had like comedians, and
Yeah.
Richie Pryor was the house comedian.
Yeah. And,
Wow.
he wasn't dirty then, right? He was
No, he was
He's
dirty.
starting to get
no,
dirty.
Well, he was. I mean, the first time I saw him, I mean, I was laughing so hard that my stomach hurt, and I wanted him to stop, but he kept going. And I almost started
He was
crying.
funny.
Then he jumped
Pryor was
off the
hilarious.
stage. He jumped off the stage with his microphone and got in somebody's face that was sitting at the table in front. He said, "This nigga's crazy." And everybody started laughing, except
Oh,
the
my
people
God.
at the table. They got up and walked out.
Oh, they didn't like it? Ah, man.
So-
You had to get it. You just had to
he
get
got
it.
back on stage, and I mean, he
Richard.
was so funny and
Wow.
such a nice guy. But anyway, years later, in 1984, I was in LA for a couple of days with my friend Ronnie Singer. We were roommates a lot over the years, And we saw Richie sitting in this restaurant we were in, and Ronnie went over to him and started talking, and Richie looks at me and he waves me over and he said, "Hey Charlie, how's it going?" And he remembered my name. I said, "Wow." I said, "You remember my name?" And he goes, "Yeah, I remember you were a musician at the scene."
Yeah.
And his memory was really good. We hung around with him for about an hour. And
Now, you said the scene was mostly like comedians and and after hour stuff, jazz and stuff. But you guys,
piano player. I think his name was Junior Mance.
Okay.
He became kind of well.
Were you guys the first like rock band to play there?
Well, we were the first like contemporary long-haired band.
Long-haired rock band. Yeah.
But there was a band I saw. The only rock band I saw there was this band with purple hair, but they had their hair combed back, greased up with jelly
Purple
rolls.
Hats?
Yeah, and they were doing like 50 songs.
Okay.
And
With
they were
purple
good.
hair.
They were good, but I said, well, this band's never gonna make it with that purple hair in their hair.
They were like 10 years too early with that,
Yeah,
15 years early.
The only thing contemporary about them was the purple hair, but even that wasn't around yet.
Wow.
So
Wow.
Charlie, let me ask you a question. Most times before you do a record recording, a lot of time you're playing in bands, like you're playing in different concert halls,
Yeah,
so you can get somebody to. But you guys did it the other way
Yeah,
around.
yeah,
You
yeah.
recorded,
Did the other way around.
recorded the album,
These
and then you
guys-
started
these
playing.
Two guys were just they were actually just Broadway hustlers.
Yeah,
Two black
okay.
Broadway hustlers
Yeah.
that were looking for a quick
Quick buck with a band, make a few dollars.
And the English, the British invasion was happening, and everything was exciting. And
Did you play those songs live at the scene?
Yeah, we played
Few
them
times?
live
Yeah.
at the scene.
Wow.
Yeah.
And we played those songs in another club that we played after the scene called the El Mio.
Yes. That was in the Delmonico Hotel,
Yeah,
right?
that was the first discotheque in New York.
First disco.
But
Wow.
the
Yeah.
scene had a guy playing the records. His name was Terry Cochran,
Right.
and his sister became a big movie star, Bonnie Bedelia. And Terry would be playing the records when nobody was on stage. And
So
then
he was like the DJ.
yeah, he was
Yeah.
the DJ, and he was a really cool guy, and we used to get some really good hash from him.
Oh, gotta have that hash connection.
The hash,
That's important.
You know, the
He used to go to
DJs.
Philadelphia.
DJ's always got the good drugs.
He used to go to Philadelphia, the guy that would get all the drugs from the merchant marines that would come in.
Holy shit!
Sure, they had the best stuff.
He would have big bars. He would have Napoli's fingers and balls, Napoli's balls.
Oh man. Stuff you
Stuff
can't even get.
Afghani, Pakistani.
Yep.
He had
The good
Moroccan.
The good stuff.
He had the best hash we smoked was this Moroccan wafers. They were like really thin. I took one hit of that,
God.
and you were tripping. I mean, you
Yeah.
actually were tripping, and I never saw anything like that. after
Yeah,
that.
that's some strong stuff.
He was getting all the really good stuff.
Wow.
We were all.
Now, when you played the El Mio, were you kind of like the house band at one point? You were playing there enough to be called that?
Yeah. First, let me tell you about the scene.
Yeah.
We were hanging out at the scene, and so I told Steve Paul, the guy on the scene,
Right.
it was called Steve Paul, the scene.
The
in
Scene.
parentheses. It wasn't Steve
And
Paul.
this was in Hell's Kitchen, this club?
Yeah, it was on
Yeah.
46th Street, west of 8th Avenue, right off the corner. There was a diner on the corner we used to call the Greasy Spoon that we used to go to and eat. And actually, Steve Paul bought the diner at one point and called it the Greasy Spoon. And it was open for about a year or so.
Yeah.
But one night at the scene, I said to Steve Paul, I said, listen, why don't you get my band to play here, because we got long hair and this is what's happening now, and you got all these old time kind of stuff. And he said, okay, we'll try it out one night. You can play on Tuesday or something. So and I said to him, well, okay. So we ended up playing, and he said, yeah, I want you guys to play like 3 nights a week or something. And I said, okay. And then I went back to the band. I said, yeah, he wants us to play a few nights a week. And they said, how much are you going to pay us? So I went back to Steve and I said, well, how much are you going to pay us? He goes, well, you can have a free Coca-Cola and food. And so I told the band, free Coca-Cola and food. And we said, okay, we'll try it because, we were, playing anywhere.
And you want to get exposure anyway.
Yeah.
You want to be exposed.
You wanna get
Yeah,
someone to hear
exposure,
music, yeah.
And so we were playing there for like, for months. And cheers.
Cheers.
And for months. And we met all these people, and we started doing like private parties. There was this guy, Earl Mack. He owned Mack Trucks. And so
I know the name.
he had us play at the scene, his private birthday party or something. And,
But you got paid for that.
yeah,
huh?
we got paid for that. I think we got like $20 each or something, which was a lot of money.
Yeah.
So we met this guy, Timmy Everett. He said he was the manager of the El Mio,
Right.
and he wanted us to play. Timmy Everett was an actor also. He was in a big movie called Music Man or something like that.
I heard of that. Yeah.
He was
Old
going out
movie.
with Tuesday Well.
Yes.
And
You said he went out with Tuesday Well?
Yeah, he was.
Damn.
Before that, not at the time, but
Yeah.
before that, he was.
Lucky man.
Yeah, but he was a gay guy, and.
Well, his one experience was with Tuesday Well, man.
Yeah, I know. And she dumped him. I
And
think
she
he
found
was-
out what he liked. Yeah.
And so he told us that he would pay us each $25 a night to play there.
Yeah.
So we would get like $125 a night, and we would play like five nights a week. I think it was at least 5 nights, maybe 6 sometimes. And so we told Steve, listen, we got a paying gig here, so we're gonna leave. And then he asked me, he said, can you find me another long-haired band to come down and play? So I went out to Queens,
Yep.
and these guys I knew,
The Vagrants.
the Vagrants
Yes.
with Leslie and Larry
Leslie West, yes.
Weinstein,
Yes.
Uh,
From Mountain, Leslie West. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
and so they were playing I heard they were playing in a bowling alley in Forest Hills on Austin Street, called the Austin Street Bowling Alley.
Yes.
So I walked in with my long
I remember.
hair, and these guys had long hair already, and this was the neighborhood I used to hang around in before that,
Yeah.
and they looked at me, they didn't recognize me, when I told them what I was, they thought I was going to beat them up or something. Because we had different gangs back in those
Yeah.
days.
Sure.
We had the Catholic gang.
Bands were gangs. Sometimes.
But
Yeah.
we had the Catholic band called the Apostles, and
Yeah.
the Jewish guys had the Kingsmen.
No. Yep.
And so we used to rumble there when I was
Oh, yeah.
14, 15.
Wow.
Zip guns.
Huh?
Zip guns.
Yeah, we used to make zip guns, but
Charlie.
luckily
Charlie.
nobody shot themselves in the foot.
Tell the world how to make a zip gun.
Well, you take a cap pistol, you take it apart.
Cap pistol.
You take an antenna off
Off a car. You have to break it off a car that's already there.
And,
right?
and then you fit it in the cap pistol, and that would fit a 22 short.
Yeah.
And then you would put rubber bands around the hammer, and then you pull it, and you shoot it, and after 4 or 5 times the thing would go off.
Now, did you ever think after 60 years of music you would be describing how to make a zip gun on a podcast?
I'm surprised I remember how to do it.
That's funny.
That's
man.
great. Yeah, I mean, in those days it was crazy. One day I'll tell the story about my father and the gangs he was in. Please, it's
man.
nuts. But all right, so there is a story about when you were playing that first disco.
Yeah, so I got the Vagrants to come
Oh,
in.
right. Sorry.
I brought them into. I introduced
scene.
them to Steve Paul, and they played. Steve liked them, and they said, "Okay, you can play." And I said, "Well, adios." So I didn't see those guys for until like 1969 when
They took off.
when Mountain they were
started, yeah.
living in Woodstock, Leslie, and he wasn't playing with the Vagrants anymore. And I ran into his brother Larry, and Larry ended up moving in with me in New Paltz
Oh shit.
in a trailer
Wow.
for a few months, and we were taking drugs and heavy drugs at that time. We were doing downtown, and that was 69, 70. And I was still playing in bands around the Hudson Valley. So I had gone up there in '67 to join a band called the Silver Bike.
Silver Bike. I was going to ask you about that.
We had a minor hit in the area in the Hudson Valley
Right,
at
right.
that time when we were on Bang Records. we're going back to the Outsiders. So we started playing at the El Mio, which was an upscale Park Avenue club in the Delmonico Hotel, and which had all these, you know, high-class people going there. Not like the scene. The scene was you know, Hell's Kitchen, after theater, dinner club, you know, where all the lowlifes hang out, you know. But I mean, I remember, you know, getting into Nicky Featherstone's facial one time because he told me, you know, I was talking to this girl. He told me to get lost, and I went in his face. I said, "You got a fucking problem."
Oh.
And he said, "Oh no, I'm sorry. You know." So
He's dead, right?
Yeah, he's dead. He died of cancer.
Yeah.
A little Irish guy.
Mm-hmm.
And,
A fixture in Hell's
killed
Kitchen.
a lot of people.
Yes,
Sure.
a big fixture.
He whacked a lot of
Big
people.
fixture in Hell's Kitchen. Well, you grew up in Hell's Kitchen, you know.
Yeah, I was
You
born
know.
and raised in Hell's Kitchen.
Yeah,
man.
so we started playing at the El Mio, and all these, you know, there were private parties there for the Vice President of Brazil, and for Bobby Kennedy, and
Really?
Then we played for Mayor Lindsay's inaugural party.
Big deal.
When he became mayor in '65.
Wow, man,
And
Lindsay.
he was a tall, good-looking guy, really friendly. Came over and shook our hands.
Cool.
And then we played one night. We played for Brian Epstein's birthday party.
No shit.
And,
Wow.
So,
Wow.
you know, and there
Beatles
was a
manager.
guy there that looked like a greaser with the jelly roll in his hair.
Another
He
guy.
was hanging out. And he bumped into Pete Hendelman, my guitar player, and Pete said, "Watch where the fuck you're walking," you know. And then we found out later that was John Lennon. So I was screaming at Pete. I said, "How could you say that to John Lennon?"
You didn't recognize him?
No, he had a jelly roll, and he had
Before they grew their
sunglasses
hair
on.
out? Yeah.
He was like the old John Lennon before
Yeah.
the real haircut.
Right.
So he was just hanging out.
And there were like all these people, and then one night we heard that, Phil Spector.
That's what I was going to ask you about, Phil Spector.
He used to live in the Delmonico Hotel 6 months out of the year, and then he lived in LA 6 months in Manchester. Well, Phil came down, and he heard us play. So we opened up with a song called Little by Little that the Stones did. That Phil Spector wrote.
Yeah, he did write that. That's right. I forgot. Yeah.
And so we opened up with that song because we used to do that
Great song.
And Phil, like, he loved it right away. He
Sure.
you know, he was like looking and
Well, you were
smiling.
playing his song.
Yeah.
Of course he loved
Yeah.
it.
So we went through
That's
the
how
set,
he is.
and then we went through the set, and then he came and he said, "Come on, sit down with me." So we were sitting down with him, and he said, "Listen, after you know, you guys get off tonight, can we jam? Can I jam with you guys? You know?" And I said,
Spector.
Oh shit.
I said, "Yeah, sure, man." So, you know, after we played like 4 or 5 sets, it was like 3 in the morning, and we were tired, but, you know, it was still Spector. And so I picked up the bass because Gordy couldn't improvise. He just played what Pete showed him to play.
And that was
so
it.
I started playing, and then Phil started, you know, he played guitar, and he started singing all these songs that he wrote. You know, the rose in Spanish Harlem.
Right.
Oh, that's a great song.
He was doing
Ronettes,
songs,
Be My Baby and stuff, yeah.
He was doing like, he had dozens of hits.
Wow.
And I think he even did To Love Him.
No, we used to love him.
He
You
was in a
didn't
band.
pull out a gun on you guys?
No.
He did to the Ramones. He did to the Ramones.
He did to the groupies too.
Wait a minute.
That's what they told me. And when I went to LA in '66,
Oh.
he did. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, tell it after. Yeah. Wow, I didn't know that.
So we played. Phil's, you know, we were trying to get off the stage. We were so tired, and the time went by, and it was like 8 in the morning, and it was getting, you know, and then finally we started falling asleep on stage, and so we stopped playing, and you know, we left, and we walked outside. It was like noon.
So you guys jammed all night with Phil.
Yeah, in those
That's
days,
awesome.
in those
That's
days,
awesome.
we could go get some speed. And,
Go
you know,
for
stay
2
up.
days. Yeah.
Get the good shit, the Colombian one.
Yeah.
Also.
So we played at the
Like.
El Mio.
Right.
And sometimes we used to sleep up in the hotel, you know, because upstairs, because Timmy Everett had a suite up there, you know.
Actually, crash out.
Oh, so you could crash out for a
and
few
then
hours.
we would use the Rolls Royce that this guy Shankus, his name, Mr. Shankus, he owned the hotel. He would let us go. We went to
What a life.
we went around, you know, in the Rolls Royce in the city. Everybody thought we were rock stars, and you were saying, "Well, what band are you in?" And we would say, "Well, you know,
we're
the
the Rolling
Outsiders."
Stones.
And they would say, "Who?"
Outside with Keith Richards.
Yeah.
And you guys got a Rolls
It's
Royce.
a new band
really?
with Keith Richards in it.
Keith Richards.
Yeah, I said, yeah. As soon as you grow your long hair, you get a limo and a Rolls Royce. You know, it doesn't matter if you're famous.
Now, I got to mention, because the Stones have come up several times. Yesterday was actually, I think it's yesterday or today, might be yesterday, is the 51st anniversary of Brian Jones passing away.
Yeah, I met him once in front of Undine's. I got him in. They wouldn't let him in, and I told him that he was part of the Rolling Stones, and so they let him in.
They let him in?
Wow.
Did you talk to him at all?
No, he said thanks. You know,
that was it.
And then, you know,
And it's interesting because there's a new DVD out. It's a new documentary by Danny Garcia. He's the guy who did Looking for Johnny Thunders. He did a documentary on The Clash. He's done a couple of documentaries on Sid Vicious and Sid
I met
Nancy.
Johnny Thunders at the Milk Bar around 1980.
Johnny Thunders is one of my all-time favorites.
85. I said, look, what's your name? And he said, Johnny Thunders. I said, I heard of you. I think he used to play at the Brooklyn Fox or something.
No. He was the guitar player in the New York Dolls.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
right.
Yeah, and then
I saw those guys play up in Harlem before they had a name. There was this guy Jack I knew that was managing them.
Hold on a minute. I gotta interrupt you. Good friend of mine. Okay.
Jack?
No, not Jack. A guy named Rick Rivets. Okay. Rick Rivets started the New York Dolls. If you saw them early on uptown
Yeah.
at a show before they had a name,
No, it was a high school. They were rehearsing in a high school.
Rick
That might have
Rivets.
been the high school party.
It might have been. Rick Rivets started the New York Dolls with the bass player Arthur Kane. They found Johnny Thunders on the street, on Bleecker Street.
Playing the guitar?
Well, it was a guy that they knew from the clubs because he dressed cool. He had all the cool British clothes.
Yeah.
Right? And these two guys, Arthur and Rick, were actually stealing a motorcycle on Cornelia Street when they saw him. Okay? The story goes. Okay? And they're like, hey, that's the guy from like Cafe Bazaar or something like that, right?
Right.
And they talked to him, you want to start a band. And it was originally the three of them, and then they had a drummer named Billy. Okay, and that was the original
Billy Michaels?
Billy Murcia.
Oh, yeah.
Billy Murcia.
I knew Sylvain.
Yeah.
Later on, in the
Sylvain
80s, I became
took
friends.
Rick's spot in the band.
Oh, okay. So
Okay.
Sylvain was a North African guy from Paris.
Yeah, he was from Egypt.
And
He was
right.
Egyptian, yeah.
Yeah, we used to speak French together.
He just wrote. You know what? I haven't read it yet, but I'm going to read it because I wonder if he mentions you, because he just wrote a book that came out last year called "There's No Bones in Ice Cream." That's the name of his biography.
That's a great
Okay.
title.
Sounds
Yeah,
like him.
and he says great things about Rick Rivets in it, but I'm wondering if maybe he would mention you. I got to read the book.
I didn't know him until the mid '80s, and I wasn't playing in bands at that point. I stopped playing in bands.
Okay.
I was doing other things.
But we're like my roots in music is that whole '70s New York scene and the '80s New York scene.
Yeah.
So like when it comes to the Dolls and Thunders and all that stuff, I know everything
Yeah,
about
then
that.
I saw the Dolls hanging out at Max's.
Max's,
around
yeah.
1972.
Right.
And then I thought the lead singer looked too much like Mick
Jagger, yeah.
And they were doing all the Rolling Stones songs that we were doing in the 60s.
So you weren't really a fan? a
No,
little
I
bit?
thought they weren't that good.
Okay.
But they were on the wave. They were on the wave, the punk wave.
Yeah, well, they were pre-punk. They were almost dead. They influenced it.
Yeah.
They influenced it.
But going back to the Outsiders.
Yeah.
So we were playing. We did these gigs, and we were getting paid, and we had a couple of bucks, making $1.25 or $1.50 a week, cash. We weren't paying taxes.
Which wasn't bad.
Which wasn't bad back then,
That
right?
It was
Right.
good. My old man was just making about $200 a week working at the Plaza as a chef.
Yeah.
And So my parents were happy about what we were doing. I think I was just turned 17 when we started playing at the El Mio. And one time we played at a mansion for the ex-Senator Benton was throwing this party, and we played for like 5,000 people.
A party like that, how much will you get paid? Do you guys get paid for that, or?
Yeah, we got a few $100.
But more than what you did the hotel gigs, right? You get a little bit more.
Well, I think we made some money there. We had our own cottage on the estate.
Nice.
Okay, wow.
It was a huge, I'm talking about a huge mansion like Downton Abbey. But, the front yard was about 1,000 acres. That went right onto the ocean.
Oh my God.
And there was like movie stars there. I remember meeting June Havoc, who was
Wow.
a 40s movie star with Gypsy Rose, who was his sister.
Yeah.
And there were like all this, there was Commander Whitehead there. They used to do some kind of commercial on TV about soap or something.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was we had an interesting time. Then, you know, finally, in the late summer, I think, or around there, we got laid off of the band. I think Timmy Everett got fired from being the manager at the El Mio, and we got laid off. So we were roaming around trying to find a gig, and we finally found a gig at a place called Our Place.
Where was that?
It was on East, something like 45th Street.
Okay.
And so we got a gig for a week. The manager there, his name was John Harrison, but I think he was a goomba from Brooklyn.
Using a different name.
And so we played there a couple of nights. And one night, these two guys came in that we knew from Queens, and they gave Pete some downs, some barbiturates.
This is before the show.
It was during, you know, we played like 5 sets then.
Oh, right.
And so when we were about to go on stage, we couldn't find Pete. You know, so I'm looking around. I looked down this long hallway. There was no people sitting there. And, you know, I walked down. I see Pete laying on the floor. You know, so we picked him up. He was foaming at the mouth.
Oh.
So I said, get him to the hospital. And Richie had a car.
He
So we
overdosed.
put him in Richie's car, and they took him to he took him to the hospital. And then so luckily there was a guy there named Mike Nelson, who was a drummer that used to DJ at the El Mio. Took that spot from this guy, black guy Billy, and he was from Beacon, New York. He was in a band called the Lost Souls, and that played at Ondine. I saw him play, and he was a great drummer. So he said he would fill in. So Pete was gone and the drummer was gone. So I had to sing and play lead. And Mike Ramirez was playing rhythm guitar, and his guitar was always out of tune. And we used to turn off his amp half the time. But he looked great. He looked like Keith Richards.
You looked great. Just sounded like shit.
It didn't matter, you know. And he couldn't sing that well. And so we did a set or two, and John Harrison, the manager, and he said, "Listen, I gotta fire you guys. I don't like, you know, what's going on. The guys ODing here, and you guys don't sound as good as you do when you got a band together." And so he fired us, and so I got together with the guys a few days later. I said, "Listen, I'm quitting this band because I can't do this drug thing with people ODing, and Mike couldn't tune the guitar."
Was Gordy getting high in those days too? Because the groupies have that kind of rep.
Yeah. Well, what happened? Stephen A. was on the scene. I remember him being at our place and telling us he wanted to record, but he wanted Gordy to be the lead singer, and Gordy couldn't really sing.
Yeah.
And I thought this guy Stephen A. was just, you know, I wasn't
kind of shady.
about him. He said he was French. I think I spoke French with him sometimes.
Yeah.
But so I quit the group, and so I started wandering around by myself, you know, hanging out at the scene, going down to the village, looking for something to get into. And one night, I saw my friend Mike Nelson, the drummer. You know, he was sitting on a park bench in the village on 6th Avenue, right off of 3rd Street, in that park. And I said, said, "Hey man, what's going on? What are you doing?" I was just about to get in the subway to go out to Queens.
Yeah.
My
Oh,
parents-
wow.
It's by the basketball courts over
Yeah,
there.
right there,
Yeah.
right there, across the street. And then on a bench.
Right.
And I said, "What are you doing?" He said, "Well, I was going to go to sleep." It was about 3 or 4 in the morning. He said, "I was going to go to sleep right here." I said, "What?" I said, "You don't have a place to stay?" He goes, No, I don't know. I might go back upstate." And I said, "Listen, you crash with me at my parents' house. They won't mind. They're cool." And so I brought him out to my parents' house in Queens, and you know, the next morning, you know, my mother went to work at 8 o'clock in the morning, and my father gets up. He used to get up around 11 to go to work at the plaza, and he said, "Who's this guy?" And I said, "Oh, it's my friend. He didn't have a place to stay." You know, and I used to bring people home and animals, bird dogs and stuff. And so we were talking. I was speaking French with my father. He didn't speak English that well. So Mike started speaking French.
Oh.
And right away, my father
Liked him because of that. Sure,
and
sure.
he told my
Old
father he
school.
was born in England, which he was.
Yeah.
But he lived in Quebec province in Canada, in the French-speaking area.
That's how he picked it up.
That's how he picked
Yeah,
it
that's
up.
the way he picked up.
Wow.
So my father liked him right away. So he was, we added him to the family right away. My brother had gotten married already and moved out, and was living a few blocks away with his wife.
Now, how did you discover that, you know, the two guys from formerly in the Outsiders were in the groupies?
Well, I went to the scene. It was late. I think it was late 1965, and I heard the groupies, the Pete and Gordy were playing there, and so I saw them play, and they were great.
Yeah.
I thought they were playing this song, "A Bald-Headed Woman."
Yeah.
Yeah, I want no
Little
more
song.
sugar in my coffee.
Right.
I never heard it before, but I thought that was great. They played.
Yeah.
They were really kind of blues rock stuff.
Yeah.
And Cooker played really good rhythm guitar.
And he had this distinctive voice
Yeah.
that you couldn't
You knew
mistake
that,
it.
Yeah. He was a little guy. He was a little short guy.
Yeah.
And actually, he had a French name, the Osier, which
right.
means the rosary.
Rosary, right.
And his father was from Nova Scotia.
Now,
Yeah.
when I spoke with Jeff Jarima in relation to the Ugly Things interview that he had done with him, with a Cooker, I said, "Is the guy still alive? I'd love to talk to him, look him up." And Jeff had no idea. Nobody knows where the guy is.
Yeah, I heard the other guys passed away. Pete and Gordy passed away.
Oh,
Gordy OD'd, I heard, and I don't know what happened to Pete. Somebody said he was working the bakery counter at Cantor's in L.A.
but
before he passed away.
now Cooker, got his name because he was the guy who cooked the dope.
Yeah, he was cooking.
He was cooking the
Wow.
dope. So
And then Steve
But-
Renee got them all cooked. So he was kind
control.
of a Svengali.
Svengali type,
I
yeah.
found out later when I read the article, because I never saw these guys again. I saw them once in L.A. And he would just keep them high all the time, and unless they went out and played somewhere.
But they were down with it because, like, Cooker in the interview tells Jeff that, even before they had the band, he would be in Washington Square Park playing an acoustic guitar and selling pills for $0.25 out of the guitar.
Yeah.
So they were doing drugs before that,
So they were doing.
Yeah, they were
drugs,
down with
yeah.
it.
In those days, downs were a no-no. Pot, hash, and ups were okay. Speed was okay because you would stay up. Downs, you would fall asleep.
Yeah.
That
That was
was
no
like
good.
we didn't like that. Most of the long-haired guys didn't like the down scene, and
Well, it wasn't until years later that all that shit would come in, heroin and all that stuff.
yeah,
right?
late 69,
60s.
70.
Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting thing because if you watch, like, Gimme Shelter, the Rolling Stones movie about Altamont, and you see how all the people at Altamont are fucking totally out of their mind, okay? And it's really because there's such a big difference between, like, the drugs in the Summer of Love, 67, and the drugs in 69, okay? I mean, it was, like, way harder drugs.
Well,
You
what
had
happened was-
and the Kung Fu Flu.
What happened was
The Hong Kong flu.
A lot of kids were taking speed and LSD.
Yeah.
And in '65, this guy Billy, I used to be the DJ at the O'Neill. We were at our place playing. Billy came and he said, "I got a new drug." And we said, "A new drug? What is it?" He said, "LSD." And I said,
LSD.
Oh my
I said,
God.
"Is it an up or a down?" He said, "It's neither." We said, "What do you mean it's neither?"
You just trip
He
for
said-
12
he
hours.
said,
Balls.
you know, you can't tell. You know when you take it. So you gave it everybody in the outside took it before the last set.
Oh, you're tripping while you're playing?
Yeah.
Oh no.
Well, we took it. We got on. We started playing. So by the end of the set, things started to get a little wavy.
Yeah.
And there were two go-go girls dancing.
That
on
must
boxes.
have looked good.
And yeah, I was like looking at the go-go girls, and they started getting funny looking. And after the show, we packed up, and we ended up walking to the go-go girls' house apartment.
Uh-oh.
And we were walking, and it was hitting us like crazy. I remember that we went by, and we were looking inside the chandelier store with the chandeliers, and when the cars drove by, all this lights and everything was like a kaleidoscope, and we were like, we were hallucinations.
Tripping balls.
So we
Tripping hard now.
We stayed there for about 45 minutes looking at this, and then the girl said, "Come on, let's go back to our." So we went back to the apartment, and things were getting really weird and stuff.
Yeah.
And the girls started, they knew. They weren't on acid, but they knew about it. I think they had tripped, and they started talking about spiders. And,
Freak you out.
Oh,
Stuff
my
to freak
God.
you out. Yeah, that's the worst.
and so I left, and I went home, and I came down, and
12
I
hours
remember-
later.
yeah,
I
I
was-
said, "What the fuck was
Yeah.
that?"
I'll never forget the first time I took a hit of acid, and I got stuck just looking at this teriyaki. Remember the teriyaki boys, those
Yeah.
big,
Yes.
like Japanese head?
Yeah.
And I was
What
like,
year was that?
this is probably like in the early late 80s, like 89,
When I
90.
when I took
was
acid-
like, holy motherfucker, this head just kept talking to me.
When I
I was
took-
like, what the fuck?
When we took the acid, it was still legal. It hadn't become illegal
Right, because they
yet.
didn't know
Oh,
about it.
yeah.
Well, they were passing the
Yeah,
law,
yeah.
and Billy said that this is going to be illegal in about a month. And so we said, well, we better take it now,
Yeah.
Do you remember the movie with Vincent Price called The Tingler?
Yeah,
Okay.
of course, yeah.
Do you remember how he shoots himself with acid in that movie?
Was it acid?
It was acid. Yeah,
That was a 50s movie.
early 60s.
Wow.
William Castle. It's a movie about a guy. He's a scientist, Vincent Price,
Mhm.
and he's trying to figure out what makes people scared. And it turns out he discovers that when you get really frightened, like really deadly scared, there's a creature in your back that goes up your spine.
It
It's
looked
alive.
like a worm with
It looks
lot
like
of
a
legs.
worm, like a centipede,
Yeah.
right? And he to do an experiment on it to bring it out, he trips. Okay,
Oh my
and
God.
he actually shoots himself up with LSD, which you probably could have done in those days, maybe, because it was a liquid.
Still legal.
Yeah. They did.
They were experimenting.
Well,
with it.
I mean, when you do acid,
In
you just put it on
Switzerland.
your tongue. But this was like
Yeah.
earlier than that. So when he does it, he actually brings the creature out of his body. It's like a black worm
Yeah,
thing,
right,
and,
right.
and when it grabs onto you, it doesn't
Yeah.
let go. It's fucked up.
Oh,
it's
man.
it's fucked up. And so Vincent Price did acid in a movie. That's pretty
Wow.
You know.
So
Just to get the creature
going
out.
back after seeing the
Yeah.
the groupies, and I said, "Oh, you guys are great."
I love
And I didn't see them for a long time, but Mike and I were buddying around. He was living with us in Queens, and he had gone on tour in Canada before that for a month or two with this guy Tony Roman, which was a big rock star.
I was going to ask you about that. Now he was a French Canadian or Frenchman.
No, he was a French-Canadian
French-Canadian.
of Italian heritage.
Right. Now he was big in Canada at that time.
His big hit in Canada was "Do What Diddy" in French.
Right. Do what did he?
Do What
Which
Did He
the
in French.
Captain Beefheart had done that. Remember? Do
Oh,
what
yeah,
did he?
yeah.
No, that was Man for Man.
That not
did the
Do What
original.
Diddy What Diddy I'm thinking of. Do What Diddy was the Man for Man one,
Do
right?
What Diddy, yeah.
Okay.
And
Do
he had
What
a
Diddy.
huge hit with that. He was like the first long-haired guy in Quebec province, and he was a huge star. So he asked Mike, Mike, actually, we got some money. Mike we were sitting in a restaurant called The Click. It was an all-night restaurant right in the 40-something street on the east side. And it's where all the celebrity rock stars and actors went to late at night. And I remember one night they wouldn't let Mick Jagger in.
What?
And I told the guy, it's Mick Jagger. He said, I don't give a shit. So me and Mike were sitting at a table, you know, drinking a glass of water with a toothpick. And Bob Dylan comes in. And Bob knew Mike. And he loved Mike. He loved the way he played. And he loved the way he looked, because Mike had this kind of Bob Dylan haircut, but he was good looking.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't like Bob Dylan.
He didn't look like Bob.
Bob was scary looking with his hair.
Yeah.
And so Bob comes over, he points at the table. He was totally stoned and drunk, and he comes over and sits down with us. And I remember Pete and Gordy were at another table, I think, with the groupies, and sitting down. And they were like really jealous because they saw Dylan come sit down, and Dylan had just had his second hit, Come Crawl Out the Window.
Yes.
Oh,
And that
shit.
was like at the top 10 at the time.
Right.
So Dylan was telling Mike, listen, you got to play with me. You got to do this. I'm doing a session tomorrow, and you got to come in and play, and blah blah blah. And I said,
And it happened.
He was really stoned, Dylan, and so we all left, and I said, oh, you're gonna. Mike said, I don't want to play with that guy. He's crazy.
He's too fucking. He's too loved up.
Crazy.
He's too loved up.
So the next day, you know, we get a phone. I answer the phone, and he says, "Can I speak to Mike?" I said, "Who's this?" He said, "Can I speak to Mike?" I said, "Who's this?" "Can I speak to Mike?" I said, "Who's this?" About 4 or 5 times. So I said, "Mike." I said, "Bob Dylan." We gave him the number.
So he called.
Mike talks to Bob Dylan, hangs up. He said, "I'm going to do a session with Bob." So, so we went into the city. This is a funny story. We went into the city. It was like the summer of '65 or something, late summer.
Right.
And we went up to Albert Grossman's office. Well, he went up. I was waiting outside for this girl, Nona Egan, that we knew, that had a brand new Buick Riviera convertible.
Beautiful
Used to
car.
drive us around, 1965. And she was like a wealthy debutante from Jersey, and she always hung out at the clubs and stuff. And we were friends. And so I dropped Mike. We were in front of. I told Nora to meet us in front of this place. It was on 55th Street. And Mike went upstairs to Albert Grossman's office. So I see. I'm waiting for Nona, and all of a sudden Bob Dylan comes, and he's dressed in the same clothes he was the night before. He looked like he slept in them, and he had snot on his sleeves. He was really filthy with baggy pants. And,
man!
And people on the street were like screaming and laughing.
Yeah.
They weren't screaming, happy screaming. They were laughing at him.
Freaking out. Yeah.
And he was like going crazy. And that didn't bother me at that point. It was long hair. I just shrugged it off.
Yeah.
And I was actually starting to laugh with the people. And Bob sees me, he grabs my arm and says, "Come upstairs with me." I said, "What? I got to meet somebody." I said, Mike is upstairs." He said, No. He dragged me with my arm. He dragged me into the building, into the elevator where there were these two secretaries going up. And they were like, ooh, they were laughing. And Bob was getting really, he was fish. I thought he was going to punch one.
Yeah.
They get off the elevator. We go upstairs. We get on the elevator. And we go into the office. And he says, wait here, in kind of a vestibule in the office before you went inside.
Right.
So I'm waiting there. And Mike comes out. And he says to me, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, Bob fucking dragged me up here. He grabbed my arm and he wouldn't let me go." And he said, "Well, he told me not to bring my friends around." And I said, "What?" I said, "Fuck him." So I went back downstairs, and I was waiting. I saw Nona, and we went to have lunch. And she had money, so she would always pay. And so we were having lunch.
Good old days.
And there was some, people at the next table. She knew the guy, The guy was married to Mary from Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Peter, Paul, and Mary.
Wow.
And so, you know, he said, come on up to the office. You know, they were managed by Albert Grossman also. So he said, come on up to the office. And I said to Nona, no, I can't go up there. Bob Dylan, he's crazy. And she said, no. And then the guy said, oh, don't. Nobody pays attention to him. He's a fucking moron. He writes great songs, but he's a fucking moron. And so they dragged me up there. So I go into the office and I meet Albert Grossman, and there was Odetta, the singer, was there.
The beatnik.
Odetta, she was a singer, black singer.
Oh, right. Okay.
And then there was Nico.
Nico from the Velvet Underground.
The Velvet Underground, we didn't know about yet. She was before the Velvet. She was just.
She was a model. Yeah.
She was trying to find something to get into, and so I was standing there. I met Albert Grossman. They were looking at me and saying, "Oh yeah," he was looking at me with the long hair, saying, you know, seeing dollar signs.
Mm-hmm.
And, and so we were talking, and it was really nice until Bob Dylan comes out and he sees me and he freaks out and he runs back into the other room.
He was scared of you.
So then Mike comes out and he says, what are you doing? I explained to him what happened. And I said, what are you doing with him? And he says, oh, he's got me reading this big bag of fan mail. And he tells me to read and take out the good ones, and he wanted to read. I said, oh my God, you know. He said, listen, we're going to go. But he said, I got to go. Tomorrow I'm doing a session with you.
Wow.
So we go into the city the next day. I go somewhere, and he goes and he does the session with Dylan. And he said it was total chaos. They didn't know what the fuck they were doing. They started playing one song, and he was breaking into another song. And that's the way Dylan was.
You don't hear about all that.
No.
You think it's all together.
Yeah.
And you know, this was the new band. The band.
Robbie Robertson.
You know, Al Cooper,
Bob Dylan, and the band,
and Paul Butterfield.
Was this? This was right around when he was doing like a Rolling Stone?
No, this was
before
after.
that.
He had,
after he already done it.
Yeah, that was with Al Cooper and Paul Butterfield.
Right. Al Cooper on organ.
Well, years
Wasn't
ago,
that bass player.
when I went to the Bob Dylan exhibit that they had, it's most of the songs that this guy wrote, he wrote them all on napkins, like dinner napkins, like these kinds of napkins. He would just write, and this is that's the way you document it. It would be like napkins.
That's
what
what he was doing when he was sitting with us at the Click, and he was writing
lyrics.
And he dropped the pen. He didn't see it, so I picked it up and I said, "Oh, I'm going to keep this pen." I was holding it, and he was like looking for the pen. Where's my pen? Where's my pen?
You stole Bob Dylan's pen.
So I said, "Oh, here it is. I found it. I know it's yours." And he said, "Oh man, this is my lucky pen. I wrote like dozens of songs with this pen." And he was like going crazy. But anyway, Mike went and did a session with Don. He said he said he would never go back and do work with him again, because he was totally chaotic and crazy.
Wow.
But he wanted to fire Levon Helm and put Mike in the band.
Really?
Yeah.
That would have been
And we didn't know who these guys were yet. We found out.
No, they were starting out.
You know, so anyway, he got $500. He got a check from the union for $500 for that one day's work. In those days, that was like, $10,000.
Sure.
And so we got an apartment on 30th Street between Lex and 3rd. It was a basement apartment nobody had lived in for about 5 or 6 years. The landlord was renovating the brownstone upstairs. So we rented it for $60 a month.
Wow.
We gave him the money, and the place was a mess. So we met this guy, Artie Schlackman. He was a bass player. He was from Queens, and he had this Mustang, a new Mustang that was really cool. We used to ride around in. So Mike, Artie, and me, we took some speed, and we started cleaning and painting the place, and we were up for 6 days. We didn't sleep. On the 3rd day, I remember.
You got a lot done, though.
I fainted, and Mike put a couple of Dexedrines in my mouth.
Okay.
And I woke
Right
up,
up.
and then we started working. After 6, 7 days, we just collapsed.
That's insane.
The apartment was beautiful.
Spotless.
We were doing pinstriping on the wall, and Artie got some furniture from his parents' house in Queens, and then we got a bunk bed and a couch, and everything was all set up. We got a TV. I remember we painted the kitchen salmon pink. I remember that. I don't know why. And so we were hanging out. You know, Mike had a little money, so you know we would have a slice of pizza for a quarter around the corner. That's what we ate for dinner all day.
Yeah.
I got really skinny. I went from 155 muscular kid, you know, with abs to 135.
Skin and bones.
Yeah, and but I was still, you know, I was strong and healthy, and even though we were taking speed and acid and
whatever.
so we were in that apartment, and you know, hanging out at Ondine's and you know, the scene and going down to the village. You know, we used to stand outside the village. The cafe, the night owl, and listen to a Lovely Spoonful.
Another band that was playing around.
64.
Wow.
Let me.
Then we went to Canada with Mike.
Right. Let me ask you. Now, you got involved with the Left Bank. Now, for everybody who doesn't know, Left Bank, known for Walk Away Renee, Pretty Ballerina, Desiree, a bunch of other songs. Very like 60s.
I might play Walk Away Renee for you, instrumental version.
That'd be fantastic.
We
fantastic.
We
got your guitar.
Here.
We got your guitar here. We're gonna get some live music here soon.
Well, let me finish about the Left Bank.
So they were considered kind of like Baroque 60s.
And they were Baroque all the time because the manager was stealing the money.
Baroque. Yes. That's true. I love it. That's great. But you got involved with them. So you know, George Cameron, for us international fans, were, you know, international regulars. George was a regular for many years. His picture's still up. He passed away.
Let me get a TNT.
TNT was his regular. Yep. And many times. But you know what's funny? For a long time, I didn't know who he was. I didn't know that he was. I knew he was a musician.
Well, sometimes he didn't know either.
Oh, that's true. He'd get lumped up. He really was. But you know, he's a very humble guy. Like, he didn't say, "Oh yeah, I was in the Left Bank." He never said
You know how many times?
No, he was embarrassed because they never, you know, at one point it was like a heartbreak story for most of those guys.
Yeah.
And I met them when I just got off the road. I just came back to New York from Canada after doing 4 months winter tour. We're back.
Wow.
The snow was at 30 feet drifts, and we were playing in hockey stadiums. And the stage was on the ice. It was about 32 degrees, and we were in a shirt and a vest.
Oh my God.
But you know, after a while, you know, it would warm up. You know, and the girls were screaming. We were stars. I'd walk into a bar and
Tony Roman was.
I couldn't pay for the drink.
Did you? Not to interrupt you, but did you play? I know that Tony Roman had recorded Smokey Robinson's song Mickey's Monkey. Did you play on that record? That version?
I think I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think. I'm not sure.
I YouTubed this song yesterday. His version of it, and it's Mickey's Monkey in French.
In French.
Oh wow!
And I'm thinking, I was wondering if you were on it. I wasn't sure.
That didn't hit.
It didn't hit. It's a great song.
Well,
wow.
He had this group. First, he went up with Mike and did a short tour, and then he came back, and then Alan Montoya was the bass player.
Yeah.
He was Carlos Montoya's son, the famous flamenco guitarist.
Right.
And so I took his place, and then there was a piano player named Dennis, who was from the village, that played, but he quit. He was really good. He quit, and this guy Fred George came up, who was a real. We didn't even know what to make of him. He had a hairdo like, you know, he used to put his hair up in rollers, but he had hairdo. He was from down south, from Louisville or Youngstown, Ohio. He was like but he was his parents were Syrian descent. And he played piano he got the gig in the Tony Roman thing. And he played piano. And he had perfect pitch. He used to tune our instruments before we would go on stage.
Wow.
And he knew every song that was ever written that he heard. And he was a classical pianist, so and he used to play piano bars, and people would say, "Play this song," and he would play that song. I never heard him.
Wow.
He would play.
You could play it by your tongue.
And he was the guy that told us about yoga, spiritualism. He was about 29 years old at the time. And he told us about his books, the Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East, about these enlightened people that were thousands of years old that were still alive. And he told us about astral projection.
Wow.
And UFOs. He knew all about it. He told us about the Rosicrucians and the Knights of Templar. I mean, he knew all about it.
Wow.
And we would just listen to him and all these stories and started to,
You may need to come on our conspiracy show.
Oh, yeah, I have to tell you about flying saucers.
Yeah, let's see. So you connected with the Left Bank after you were done with Tony Roman,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, we came back to, me and Mike came back to New York, and we still had that apartment that we were renting, and we had for 4 months paid the rent there, and we were making $250 a week with Tony Roman.
Right.
I just turned 18 and we went up.
That's fantastic.
Took a 12-hour ride from New York to Montreal on the train, and we were making $12.50 plus room and board. And we were on the road half the time, so we could keep most of the money, and But anyway, Tony started, we started fucking up in the snowstorms and canceling gigs, and Tony got behind our payments and ran, and we had to go to the union to get some money. We left on a bad note, and went back to the city. But we got like $500 each before we left from Tony's uncle, who mortgaged his house to pay us, because the union said he had to pay us.
Sure.
But Fred George stayed with him for another month or so up there before he came back and started, we put a little band together and started playing some more. But while we came back, Mike and I, and Nona Egan, who I mentioned earlier at the Riviera, she brought me up to World United Studios. She said, "This is Ben looking for a guitar player. Maybe you might be interested." So I went up there, and I recognized George Cameron from hanging out in the street doing the English accent thing. That wasn't really a musician.
And then the English accent.
On a Puerto Rican.
So I met Mike Brown, Mike Lukowski there before Mike Brown. His father, Harry Lukowski, owned the studio and was the manager and producer. And there was Steve Martin. He called himself Steve Martin at the time. His real name was Carmelo Esteban Martin Caro. He was a Spaniard. His parents his mother was a flamenco guitar player, and his father was a flamenco dancer.
And he had an incredible voice.
Yeah, they used to tour all over the world.
Yeah.
And she was pregnant in New York, where she dropped him.
Yeah.
On a tour.
Really?
And so he was born in New York.
On tour.
On tour.
Yeah. Wow.
And when I met him, his father had died, 35 years old, had died in front of the hotel of massive heart attack.
Oh.
And so the mother went back to Spain with the body, and Steve left Steve in the hotel, and that's where he was living. And so I met these guys, and who else was there? There was George, Steve, Mike, and
Tom.
And Tom.
Tom Finn.
Right, I forgot.
Yeah.
And Tom, they played Walk Away from Renee for me, and the flip side, I haven't got the nerve. I didn't think Walk Away Renee was going to be a hit because it wasn't really danceable. It didn't have that hard dance beat, but the other side did.
Yeah.
Haven't got the nerve. So I told them that, and they were like, "Well, it's already recorded. We already got a deal on a label. It was a subsidiary of Mercury called Smash.
Smash Records.
And
Mercury's tour.
This was in May 1966. So I like these guys. I started jamming with them, but George couldn't play the drums. Tom couldn't play the bass. He knew one or two notes.
Tom just passed away this week, so
Mike could
rest
play,
in peace, Tom.
Mike could play classical guitar.
Right.
And the songs that he wrote, classical piano, and he had a beautiful harpsichord there. But he couldn't play rock and roll. He could only play with a lead sheet in front of him and read the music. So I started jamming with these guys. I told Mike, well, this is how to play a 1-4-5 turnaround. So I started playing some songs, some Chuck Berry songs, and G, C, D, back, and Mike said, "Oh, that's all you got." I said, "Yeah, this is all you got to do." So he started playing this rock and roll stuff, and I showed Tom Finn. I said, "Here, Tom, here, do this bass progression, because I was playing bass with Tony Roman.
Right.
And I showed him some bass progressions, and I showed George, I said, do this with your bass foot, and do this with your right hand and your left hand. And so we started,
crazy.
so I started playing with these guys, the left bank, and they didn't even, they had the name. Somebody came up with, some older guy came up with that name.
Yeah.
They used to hang out in the left bank in Paris. And so, and then they found out I was French and with the name of the left bank, and they said, oh, you got to be in the band, you got to be in the band. I said, listen, I can't play with you guys. You guys don't know how to play. And plus, you know, if we went out into a club, it would be a disaster. So that summer, I would go up there and hang out with them. We would smoke weed, take acid. We would jam till 8 in the morning. You know, the father wasn't there, and bring girls up there. It was, you know, I would bring Mike Nelson and Fred George. You know, the guys from the Tony Roman. We'd go up there and we you know, scare ourselves in the dark with the lights on, and you know, smoking pot and playing and Fred would play classical songs with Mike on the piano, and there was a big piano there, a Steinway and harpsichord. There were amps. There was an Ampeg bass amp there, and there was a guitar amp. I would bring my guitar. And so we had a great summer there, and I was playing with those guys. I was playing with my band. We did a couple of gigs around New York. I remember going to the Bronx and Westchester County one day. And then Fred George said he was leaving. He said like he was going back down south to play in the piano bar because he made more money.
Playing the piano bar.
He had like a personality, this guy, Fred George.
Yeah.
When we would go out and play after the show, everybody, instead of going to Tony Roman to start, everybody would go to Fred George. And they wanted to meet him. And he was like slicked out. His hair was like that. He looked like one of those southern rockabilly guys.
Yeah.
And he would start talking to people. They were talking French to him. It didn't matter. He was speaking English, and they loved him. Everybody loved Fred. He was like little dogs and kids loved him. You know, this guy. You know, he didn't have. He wouldn't kill a fly. He was actually really spiritual. I walked by his room at 6 in the morning, take a piss, and he was in a full lotus position, meditating. With his eyes rolling around his head. And I said, we would look at him.
Where are you, man?
And we would like, go over and touch him, you know, and say, hey, what's happening? And his eyes would come down and he'd start laughing, you know. He was like an Indian guru sage.
Wow.
Anyway, he left. He left to go down south. I never saw him again.
Yeah.
I got a few letters from him, and then later on in the '60s. Then we lost touch, and then I actually tracked him down in the late '90s. I think it was Nanette Workman. She was she came up with us with Tony Roman. She was a gorgeous singer that Tony was going out with, and he made her into a big rock star. She learned how to sing French and speak French. She did the song in Maintenant, What Now My Love. She did it in French. It was on Tony's record company. It sold 100,000 records.
Holy shit,
that's huge.
Which was the gold record in those days.
Yeah.
So she would open up to the Tony Roman 5, and we toured around with her. And anyway.
So getting back to the left bank for a second.
Getting back to the left bank. So in the end of the summer, Mike had this girl that he used to go out with up in Beacon, and she came down, left her husband, and started staying with her. And and my girlfriend Ann from Brooklyn was staying with me, and the two couples in this little apartment. And then one day, her father shows up with her husband, and he was a really tough guy, nasty guy, and his last name was Lyons, and he was trying to drag
the girl out?
Mike's
girlfriend out,
back into the car. Trying to think of it, and so we were all like trying to fight, and so the cops showed up, and her name was Jackie Lyons. She was a really gorgeous girl, And the cops show up, and we told the cops, yeah, he's trying to kidnap his daughter, you know, bring her back, and with the husband, but she left, and she's living with us now, and this is where she's an adult. She was over 18. And so the cops said, oh, you can't do that. You can't do that. Yeah. And so they said, okay, you stay with this guy, we disown you. And they got in the car and they went home.
Oh, wow.
In New York. So that was that, and at one point, she found out she was pregnant. So they thought it was Mike. But years later, found out it was the husband.
Yeah.
But Mike raised the kid. It was his.
Oh.
It was his.
Wow.
And,
So it was the guy that tried to kidnap her.
The guy that came back to try to get her, the husband. Yeah.
Well, it was
And
the
the
father.
father.
He was the aggressor.
But the husband was there.
was just standing.
Yeah, okay.
And so they went back upstate to live with Mike's parents because she was pregnant. So I was by myself in that apartment, and I ran out of money, and it was the end of the summer. I didn't know what to do, and you know, and all of a sudden, I was hanging out with the left bank. You know, we were jamming. They were getting a little better.
You weren't officially a band member.
I never wanted to join the band. They kept asking me.
You didn't want to. You were just hanging out with them. Yeah.
Well, and they were, you know, then all of a sudden, the Walk Away Renee is like 180 in cash box.
Okay.
Some guy in the Midwest started playing it, and they got an order. They got an order for 10,045s.
Yeah.
And so they were all. I'm thinking, should I join the band? And I'm like, I can't join this. They can't play. They couldn't even play Walk Away Renee.
That was all studio guys, right?
Yeah, it was all studio guys. But Mike played the harpsichord.
Right.
He played the harp. He wrote it with two other guys.
Well, it has that sound. It's all
And,
studio
Wow.
And so they were going on the road, and Mike Brown, he changed his name to Mike Brown. He kept asking me, come on, you got to join the band. You got to join the band. Come on, please join me. I said, listen, no, you can find another guitar player. So they found this guy. And first, he shows up, Jeff Winfield. He plays a little bit. He wasn't that great. He couldn't tune his guitar either. And, but he had long hair. And so they went to take pictures. And he wanted me to come with them and take pictures with them just in case I changed my mind. And I said, no, go let this guy. And while the song was climbing up on the charts, I should have went with him, but I didn't. And I kind of regretted it later. And then they started rehearsing with Jeff, and you know, I was helping them out on some songs, and they were doing, you know, I showed them how to play some Who songs, Can't Explain, and some things, a couple of cover songs they did. And so, bang, you know, they went out on tour. You know, I went up to see them one day, and the father said, oh, they just left to go on a plane to go to California someplace. I said, oh, okay. So then I'll end the story. I was hanging out with the stewardess that would fly to L.A. and New York on the weekends. I forgot her name. And then we went out that night. We had a great time. We went back to my apartment on 30th Street. We were high on speed. And we were on speed. And she said, oh, I got to go to the airport and check in. And she said, why don't you come to L.A. with me on the flight? And I said, okay. So I went out to Queens. I bought $300 for my mother. You know, I got some clothes at the apartment, and I got my 12-string guitar that I bought when I came back from Canada. It was a Guild 12-string red. I found out later. It was in the Nanny's window on 48th
Street. Yeah.
And I saw it. I fell in love with it. I bought it. It was $300, and I found out later they only made 3 of them.
Oh, shit.
White one, the red one, and the black one.
Wow.
Steve Miller has one of them.
Yeah.
And the other one that we didn't know. And the one I had, the red one, I used to sell to George when I needed money, and he would sell it back to me. That went back and forth, and then we would hawk it. And George had hawked it at one point, and we lost
track of it.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
So I went to California. I went to the airport, and Kennedy Airport, and I got on the plane. I said to the woman who was buying the ticket. I said, "Oh, can I see what the so-and-so, the stewardess?" And she said, "Oh, she just made a phone call." Then she came out. She said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "I'm coming to LA with you." She said, "Oh, okay." Because she said, "I have an apartment. You can stay there." I said, "Oh, okay." You know, when she's mentioned, so I got on the plane and with my guitar and my little bag, and she was there, and I was in the back talking with her and the other stewardesses, and I went to sit down. The guy said, "Oh man, you rock and roll star, you're talking with stewardesses, and I see the guitar, and everybody thought I was somebody." I was there, so we got to LA. We take a cab to our house. I walk in the house, and lo and behold, who's there? Pete and Gordy.
In the groupies.
This guy flipped from New York, and we lived from the village, and like 3 other guys I didn't know.
So what? This chick just like collected musicians and everything.
Yeah. So I said, "What the fuck are you guys doing here?" He said, "Well, we were staying here, but the landlord." He shows up and he said to her, he said, "You got to go with all these people. You got to get out right away." So we were just I didn't know I think later that night I ran into my friend Ronnie Singer, who I met at the El Nido. He was from the Bronx, and he was we were at Cantor's. You know Cantor's?
No.
It's a famous deli there.
Okay.
It's like a
in the Bronx?
Like a Katz.
No, in LA it's like
LA.
Katz.
Oh,
it's
okay.
like Katz.
It's like Katz.
It's a Jewish big, huge place like Katz.
Katz is
So me and I had gotten in touch with this guy Larry Duncan. He was the guitar player in Tony Roman 5. He was from California. So when we got thrown out that day, I called Larry, and Larry said, "Oh, come stay with me at my girlfriend's house, her parents." So, but it was outside of LA, so I was out there for a few days, and there was nothing to do. But the mother was growing some pot in the backyard. So we were smoking pot, and so I said, "Larry, we got to go into town and hang out because so we go to Cantor's. I run into Phil Spector. I said, "Hey, Phil."
In LA?
And some his bodyguard gets in front of me.
Yeah.
And I said, "Who the fuck are you?" And I was a tough kid, back in the day. And then Phil said, Phil said, "Okay, no, it's Charly. So come here." So I spoke to Phil. We hung out for a second. He gave me his phone number. I never called him. And I heard from Pete and Gordy that Phil pulled the gun on Stephen A. Because they were trying to get in. They wanted to come into his mansion.
Oh.
So he chased them away with that later. But me and Larry and his girlfriend, what was her name? She had a big hit in the early 80s called "I Never Been to Spain." But I never been to Spain. Anyway, Charlene Duncan.
Charly Duncan.
She was an Italian. She used Larry's name. And me and Larry and Charlene were sitting there, and I still had a few bucks. I was buying breakfast. So I see my friend Ronnie over there where the pies were. He was picking up like a bunch of pies. I said, "Hey, Ronnie." He turns on and sees me. He puts the pies down, and he comes over. I said, "What are you doing, working there?" He goes, No, I'm stealing the pies. I'm just so hungry, I had no money." We were just picking up the pies and walk out. Nobody ever said anything.
Oh, shit.
So I told him, I said, "Yeah, I'm living at Larry's out in the boondocks." And he said, "Well, why don't you come stay with me?" So, I got my stuff, and Ronnie was staying in this one-bedroom apartment, this little apartment, with a guy named Ralph that we knew from New York. He was a conga player that also knew the left bank. And Ralph, Ronnie said, "Oh, Charlie, yeah, he's going to say." But there was a whole rock band living in the living room with everybody. From Kentucky or somewhere. They were all 14, 15.
Man.
They were all underage. They were back in Ralph. He was a Puerto Rican guy from New York. He had long hair, he could sing and dance, and he looked good. And so I said, "Yeah, we'll crash on the floor somewhere." And we were there for the manager of the building complex didn't mind all these guys, and I was there for like a week or so or two. And then all of a sudden there was a knock on the door, and these cops walk in. they have a list of names. Do. And
So all the young guys.
Yeah, they were all the band. They were all underage, and the parents wanted them back.
Yeah.
So they took them. They took the whole band, and Ralph didn't have a band. So it was me, Ralph, and Ronnie in the apartment. And I think I gave Ralph a little bit of money for some rent, but he never paid the rent. So one day he disappears, and goes live somewhere else. You know, and the manager comes in, where's Ralph? I said, oh, he left. So the manager's like grabs my suitcase. He goes, I'm keeping this until you guys pay the rent. I said, fuck you, man. I said, you go see Ralph. He goes, well, I don't know where he is. So I told him where Ralph was. So he gave me back my suitcase.
Oh man, well, you want to do some live music?
Yeah, I could.
Yeah?
But anyway,
yeah, finish that story.
Anyway, I was in LA.
Yeah.
And I hear that the Left Bank is staying at this motel down on Sunset.
Yeah.
So I go down and I see, they say, holy shit, Charlie, what are you doing here, man? And Mike kept saying, listen, you got to join the band. This guy, Jeff, can't fucking play.
Yeah.
And, you know, we're playing tonight. And so I found out where we were playing. And then I ran into this, I called this guy, Johnny Post, I used to know from Queens, from junior high school. I used to hang out in the neighborhood. And he comes down, he had this limousine that he had bought, this older limousine. So we go to the show with the limousine, and you know, we get out, with my long hair, and girls were who the fuck is this guy? I go backstage. So they start playing, and it sounded like just a bunch of noise. And Mike had this clavinet, which I told him to get Wurlitzer to make you an electric harpsichord. So, which seemed like a good idea. So they made him this clavinet that you had to tune after every song, because it went out of tune with a screwdriver or something. And
not good for live.
Jeff Winfield, the guitar player, sounded to Mike, Tom Finn, George was a disaster on the drums. It took them about a year more before they started sounding okay. You know, before they started becoming musicians. And I saw the band, my friends said, well, they really sounded terrible. But the girls didn't care. They were screaming and yelling.
Well, they love Steve.
Yeah.
You know, and you couldn't...
They love Steve, right?
Oh, yeah. They loved Steve. Was a really good-looking kid. He was a Spaniard with blue eyes.
That's it.
His mother was a full-blooded gypsy. And in the summertime, he would go live with his grandmother in a cave. And the kids in town used to make fun of him.
Yeah.
So Steve was, I don't know if his father was a gypsy, but his mother was a full-blooded gypsy. You can see her on YouTube.
Really?
She's on a Groucho Marx show of 1960.
Oh, wow. Wow. What was her name?
Geralda something.
Okay.
It wasn't Carol. That was her husband's name.
Okay.
And you see her on Groucho Marx playing, and Groucho was fooling around with her. And it's really funny. You gotta find a flamenco guitar player.
Okay.
I'll see if I can send you
the link.
I'll share it on the Facebook, or I'll send you the link.
Okay, so Rob, how we doing with time?
We're good.
We're good? So you want to do a live thing for us?
Yeah, I need to that chair.
Yeah, okay. Get yourself set up. We're going to do a little live music here. This is the second show we've done with live music.
Yeah, with live music.
The RockerMike and Rob Present show. All right.
Some water back there. Water?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll get you some.
Right there. Just use that.
Use this?
Yeah.
All right.
You want some of the wine?
You want the
Charlie?
No, I don't drink until
Till you're done playing?
I went 7 days without drinking.
I went 15 minutes without drinking.
Me too.
That's hard.
Yeah.
We're still filming here.
There you go, sir. All right. We're still live?
Yeah, still alive.
It's great.
You need another beer?
Yeah, I'm going to get myself another beer.
Can you grab me that other Diet Coke if you get up?
Yep.
All right, so we got Charlie in a second. Hold on, Charlie, wait till Mike come back. Live from the bunker.
Anyway, so when I got back from LA, are we on?
Yeah, we're still on.
When I got back from LA, But Mike was saying, you got to come back and join the band. So I got back from LA. They had already got another guy. Oh, shit.
Yeah, be careful of that chair. Grab that one.
Oh, yeah.
I can't use the one with the...
Try the other one.
Try
Maybe
this
the other
one.
We got two.
Last guy broke that chair.
Yeah.
Try this one.
Oh, I think that was much better.
Yeah.
So I got back, they got a guy named Rick Grant to play guitar. So I said, cool, and he was really a banjo player. He won some kind of New York State banjo contest. But he played guitar and he wasn't bad.
All right. So what are you going to do for us, Charly?
I don't know. Let me see. First I'm going to show you how to tune the guitar.
Oh, here we go. Very important.
Very important to be in tune.
That's okay. That's okay.
You know, you can tune it with your cell phone now, too. They've got apps for that.
Well, we used to tune it with the regular phone years ago. The dial tone was A.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So you could pick up a dial tone and
How long have you had that guitar?
Oh, I bought it in 1977 at a residential hotel where my mother worked. Some hippie left it, couldn't pay his bill, so they locked him out. So a few years later, the woman said, hey, I got this guitar. I paid $125 for it. It's a 1964 Martin.
Mm-hmm. Martins are the best.
016 New Yorker. And I've had it since 1977.
Want a little speed? Did that help you?
Huh?
Want a little speed?
In those days, we were taking methadone.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I'll play Walk Away Renee.
Walk Away Renee.
Maybe I'll do a short version.
Okay. Great. Fantastic.
What about, I don't know, my finger's a little stiff for some reason. My back. What about Pretty Ballerina?
I was going to ask you, do you know that?
Yeah.
I love that song.
Ooh, another song.
With the mistakes. This is with Pretty Ballerina with the mistakes.
With the mistakes. Okay.
With the-
Fantastic.
And also,
Fantastic.
I made a demo. Mike asked me to come in and help him with a demo, and it was Desiree. He had the beginning of the song, and he had the title Desiree. So I helped him finish the song. I wrote part of the song with him, but I didn't get my name on it because I was supposed to get my name on it because I wrote part of the song.
Yeah.
I wrote the, I wrote this one. And I basically wrote the chords to that part too.
Yeah.
But this was a melody. That was the melody. So I was supposed to get my name on it. And Mike Brown's father comes up to me one day in the studio. He goes, "Listen, we're not going to put your name on the song because, it's going to take a year or two to make a few $100 and blah, blah, blah." And he shoved $25 in my pocket. And I said, after that, I wasn't friends with Mike anymore.
Yeah.
I was still friends with Steve,
It's kind of low.
Tom, and George, which stopped hanging out with Mike also at one point. And after Desiree, that was a minor hit anyway. It went up to like 98 in Cashbox. And what happened? One day Mike went up to Steve and the rest of the guys and said, "Listen, I'm writing all the songs on the album, the A-sides, and everything. And that's it." So Steve slapped him and threw him on the floor. And Steve was a crazy Spaniard, and really hot-blooded.
Yeah.
Had a lot of soul. And he died in January.
Steve,
I spoke to him a few days before that. I hadn't seen him in years. But
I heard about that.
We used to live together. We were roommates at one point. Anyway, so Mike fired the band. He said, "I'm going to start another left bank with a guy." He started another left bank with a guy named Bert Summers.
That went nowhere, right?
No, they did one gig and the girls were screaming, "That's not Steve Martin! That's not Steve Martin!"
That's what they wanted, yeah.
And Bert actually was a good singer and a songwriter, and he was the only guy that played at Woodstock that didn't make it. He played at Woodstock.
Really?
So they might have him now with in the movie because he didn't do. His managers, the record, didn't want him in the movie because they weren't going to make any money.
Right.
So Bert, poor Bert, that's another.
He didn't make
tragedy
it. That's a
story.
whole other show.
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
Wow. All right.
So,
Well, listen, Charlie, thank you so much.
all right, man.
All right. I mean, you were fantastic coming down
And
here.
then, and then we did the reunion from 2010 to 2013. with
That
the-
stuff is on YouTube if everybody wants to look at
we
it. I've
opened
seen.
up for the Zombies.
That was
3
at
times.
Oh shit.
that was at the
Plus-
Highline Ballroom
Plus, I was the
Right.
bass player with the left bank
At
on the
the-
third
on
album.
the third album.
And,
What's that album called?
Well, there's two titles. There's Strangers on a Train, and it didn't come out for 10 years.
Right.
It came out in England called Voices Calling.
And what year was that?
10 years after, like
70s?
87. We did the album in 78,
Okay.
and it came out 10 years later.
Wow.
Okay.
And then we did with these guys. George became, kind of disabled. He drank a lot, and Tom was doing. He became a famous DJ. He was making
The Palladium. Tom Finn. He used to DJ
Tom
at the
Finn,
Palladium.
Oh, yeah?
And Steve, me and Steve wrote 2 songs.
Yeah.
And recorded 2 songs at Media Sound that he sang lead on. And it's on an album that I put out in 2005 called Charly, Cazalet, Rough Mix, New York City. Mm-hmm. And we have those 2 songs with Steve singing on it.
Is that on iTunes? Available on
Yeah, it's
iTunes?
on iTunes and CD Baby.
Okay.
And just punch my name in.
Charly Cazalet.
And actually I have a copy for it in the car. I was going to bring it in.
Oh, fantastic.
I have a copy for you guys.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate
And,
that.
George plays drums on 3 of the songs.
Oh.
Steve sings 2 leads with me on harmony, and one guy from the Silver Bike, which was 67, 68,
Right.
sings 1 song that I wrote. And
Fantastic.
so it was just all these songs that I, had the tapes too, and some I re-recorded. I wrote and re-recorded fresh on a digital studio.
Okay.
And that's about it in a nutshell. In the mid-'80s, I stopped playing in bands and started doing business.
You were in the restaurant business for a little while, right?
Well, yeah. At first, I had a boutique on West Broadway in 1984, and then we opened up an art gallery right next to it on Broadway. And then I opened up. They closed down. I still do an art business till today, and they closed down. Then I opened up a restaurant called Le Pescadou on 6th Avenue and King Street, which was a French
restaurant. Yeah.
It had 2 stars in the New York Times, Brian Miller. And Tom Finn used to come down.
Oh, cool.
When it was, in the early 90s and stuff.
Right.
George, I didn't see George so much anymore, and but then we started hanging out again, and he was coming over my house. He had stopped drinking, and he was straight. Him and Tom were on in AA, So
He went back to it because I knew him when he was drinking.
yeah, he went back.
Yeah, good guy. All right, so thank you, Charly Cazalet. Thank you so much for coming on, and playing and telling your great stories. You're an important person in the whole scheme of things in rock and roll.
Yeah, there's so many more stories. I started writing my memoirs about the '60s. It's going to be called My First Band and How I Survived the '60s.
Wow. Well, listen, when that starts to take traction, you get published. Let me know. We'll talk about it. We'll have you back on.
I'm on the 5th page, and it's going to take me about a year to write it.
You can come back anytime you want.
Long enough, you might see it out there somewhere.
You'll be fine. You'll be fine. All right. Thank you so much,
people,
Charly.
Thank you very much.
It was
Have
a pleasure.
good day, Charly. Thank you for everything,
Thank you,
man.
sir.
And
Michael.
people, from Charly, from RockerMike and Rob, don't get drunk, get lumped up. See you next time.